welcome to the Heritage Minute Special Podcast. I'm your host, Steve Simon, class of 77. In this episode, we will address a recent and important change. Historically, cadet sabers were made in Germany. Starting in 2024, that process was brought stateside, specifically to Colorado Springs. The bulk of the work to make that happen was done by Mr. Ron Hardman, Kilroy's Workshop's founder, and AOG staff member Kayla Ladd. I spoke with both of them recently. Here are portions of those conversations, starting with Ron. So first off, please tell us about your company. How did you get started in this business?
Oh, goodness. My dad was a shop teacher, 36 years as a shop teacher, and I guess I picked up where he left off. So in 2013, I started Kilroy's Workshop out of an airplane hangar with a porta potty, and we just kept on growing our student body. We actually grew into actually making products as well and doing repair work and things like that. And so back last year, we formed Excalibur from Kilroy's Workshop as well to run our production equipment. And we've trained over 4,000 students in at least one class every year.
So I understand that Kilroy's has done work with the AOG previously. So what did you do? How did you get involved with the AOG initially?
Yeah, so for years, we've actually done repair work on existing sabers going back to, we did a project for the class of 1971, I believe it was, but then also individual sabers coming through here for repair work and things. I worked with Kayla and a number of other folks over there at the AOG.
Kayla, what is your role here at the AOG?
My role is Assistant Director of Merchandise and Customer Service.
Now, the AOG has been selling sabers to graduates and cadets for many, many years. Where did our sabers come from prior to this change?
Our sabers were ordered and manufactured in Germany. Würzburg Kirschbaum was the company.
What is the impact of having sabers not just made in the USA, but here in Colorado Springs?
So the main impact is freight. Shipping costs from overseas were quite high, and the quantities that we had to order at one time were huge. We'll be able to eliminate the shipping freight costs basically because they're here in Colorado Springs. And the quantities that we order or keep on hand can be smaller because it's local.
After that initial interaction, the relationship between the AOG and Kilroy's continued to develop. I asked Kayla, in addition to freight costs, what else prompted the idea of Kilroy's taking over our saber production?
So in 2023, there was an order placed for 200 sabers, and when the sabers were received, it was without the etching on the blade, which is part of the traditional cadet saber. So in lieu of sending the entire shipment back to Germany to have the etching, we already had a relationship with Kilroy's Workshop as far as refurbishing sabers and doing saber repairs on cadet sabers. So we called on Ron Hardman, the owner, and he was able to apply the etching on those sabers for us. That began our conversation of made in the USA sabers.
As Kayla said, it was a natural next step to just bring the production here.
Well, we've talked about the saber stuff for a long time. Last year kind of finally came to a head, and we're like, why don't we just making these things here? We can do that here, right in town in Colorado Springs. And so Kayla was like, woo, all right, we're going for it. And so she took that forward and ran with it, and it worked out great.
Kayla explains several of the key factors that had to be considered prior to making the move from Germany to Colorado.
So we did, at the beginning when we started having the conversation with Ron, we also brought into the fold Dr. Brian Lasley, who's the historian at USAFA. We had several email conversations and then in-person conversations with him regarding what were the parameters that we needed to work within, what was the history of the saber, were there any restrictions on changes that we were going to make, were those even options? We did he did some research and assured us that there were no restrictions. We were keeping the saber the same, just applying additional structural improvements and material improvements to the saber.
Ron describes the process and the positive changes they made to the manufacturing of the sabers. True to the original form, he brought an artistic flair to it, not just making them, but making them better.
So the process actually starts with doing the research that we did on it. So we wanted to be historically accurate. We wanted to be true to the Air Force Academy. So we started talking with Kayla, to the historian, to find out what was here for a reason versus what wasn't. And so we found out, like, the insignia that's on here, on the saber that I've got, the insignia that's here and it has been is not actually an Air Force Academy insignia. And so we made that change. So we changed that insignia on there. One of the other things that we did is we changed the wrap on the handle. So historically, with the USAFA sabers, it's been stamped steel. We wanted to do a legitimate wire wrap handle. I'm big into history, historical accuracy, and this is the way it would have been done. We wanted to make improvements in every area that we could have. So we start off with the blade steel here, and we grind that down. So we actually hand grind these things. We're going to be using a CNC here in a little bit as well to actually help us put in the bevels and be efficient with it. We cast bronze guard and pommel. This is the guard and this is the pommel. And then we wire wrap the handle on here and assemble all those pieces together. And so that goes into the making of it. Then we also plate these so that they're silver. Otherwise, the bronze look doesn't exactly fit the Academy. So
I asked Kayla to share some of the changes people will notice when comparing these new sabers to the ones the AOG used to purchase.
We have actually put the Academy crest onto the saber, whereas prior it was the Air Force crest. There have been improvements made in materials and a higher quality of materials. There's better defined artwork of the traditional saber. It's aesthetically the same as far as artwork is. The finishes have improved, and there's a coating that is applied that won't allow it to, that will prevent it from tarnishing, which was an issue with the prior saber. The metal was thin and the polish that it required was compromising the finish. So that has been fixed on this new Made in the USA saber.
With the improvements in place and the manufacturing moved stateside, I asked Ron about the specifics of saber manufacturing, starting with the labor involved.
it would take, beginning to end, about 6 hours to make one saber if we would separate them out. But we do it in assembly line fashion.
Of course.
Yeah, to batch that up. So, but it would take about 6 hours.
Here you have several specialists who do specific aspects of the saber.
Absolutely.
So about how many specialists would you say would be involved in making one saber?
I would say, I think we've got about 5 people who are specialists in each area. And I say 5 positions that are specialist positions in there. And then since we've got 27 staff, all of whom started off, actually all but one started off as a student in our shop, by the way. So they've been here for years and years. But they know this area, these areas really well. And they're the folks that we put on those so that it becomes the best saber that can be produced. And that's what our goal is.
Kayla offered information about how cadets, grads, family members, and others can obtain one of these new state-of-the-art sabers.
So we will be selling them here in Doolittle Outfitters at the Association of Graduates in Doolittle Hall, and also on our online store, shop.usafa.org.
In my conversation with Ron, it became very clear that this project is a labor of love. He didn't hold back when we asked him to tell us what the project means to him.
I'm from a deep military family myself. We're in Colorado Springs, which is the home to so many military. We work with Wounded Warrior Project, River Deep Foundation, Operation TBI Freedom. So many military groups come in here to learn, to grow, to become community, that to have this contract here, it's such an extension of what we did anyway as far as community building that it's so impactful. And then when you think about what the sabers represent, People have these hanging on their walls, but it's more than that. This is a symbol of their time and their dedication, not just to the Air Force, not just to the Academy, but to our country and to their families, because these go down from generation to generation. So if you can't tell, it makes me emotional. Very, very important.
As we conclude this edition of the Heritage Minute Special, a thanks again to our guests Ron Hardman and Kayla Ladd. You can learn more about this project in the December 2024 issue of Checkpoints. Heritage Minutes and Heritage Minute Specials are all available anytime at usafa.org/heritagehub. That's usafa.org/heritagehub. Heritage Minutes published the first and third Sundays in audio and video. Heritage Minutes specials like this one drop the second and fourth Sunday of every month. You can also find us by searching Heritage Minutes on YouTube, and you can catch This Day in Air Force Academy History every day on KAFA, the Academy's radio station, at 97.7 FM or online at usafa.edu/radio.
You've been listening to a Heritage Minute special with Lieutenant Colonel Retired Steve Simon, USAFA Class of 77. The Heritage Minute Special is a production of the Long Blue Line Podcast Network and presented by the U.S. Air Force Academy Association and Foundation.